All right, so welcome everyone to the Open Security Summit, May Summit session. And we have our speaker for today, Abbas Haidar and Chris Holman. So they'll be talking about cybersecurity roadmap, how to start.
Okay, the screen is hijacked again.
All right, so I think.
Okay, I will start now. Thanks for joining me today. My name is Abbas Haidar. I am a security enthusiast. I am SOC manager for Ant Group International and Europe. I have some technical background, worked a couple of years in IT. I like threat modeling and graph visualization. And I have a special passion to security on autonomous system, and I have beaten diabetes. Before I start, there is a quote I like. There is no battle was ever won according to plan, but no battle was ever won without one. So plan is essential. So it's something I really like to. It's a quote I really like. Today, I'm going to talk about how to put a cybersecurity roadmap and how to start the strategy, how to start it all. So the scenario here. So what is the scenario? Scenario is you are a new information security professional. You're a CISO, you're head of information security, security manager, joining a new company, or you are someone who is working in security and you want to reshape your cybersecurity strategy, or you are like building the cybersecurity department from a greenfield. So you are working at the company, you have all the technology team, and as we know, after the pandemic, a lot of companies, start to have a security department, which they didn't have probably before the pandemic, and for many reasons. We're not going to go and discuss them now, but I mean, so that's the scenario. So the mission, you have been tasked to create a 90 days plan to reshape, reassess, or create a new cybersecurity roadmap for your employer. So first thing I need to insist, and I want to talk about, is before you put any plan, if you don't have the blessing of the high level, I mean, your senior managers, your C-level, your board, do not bother and do not click next here. Do not. So this is something very, very essential. You need to back up of the top so you can apply and start dreaming about the security roadmap. The strategy always comes from the top. So what I wanted to talk about, so it's a 90 days plan, as I said. So in the first 30 days, you just joined, or now you've been asked, to do your, cybersecurity roadmap. What do you need to do? If you don't have that, so probably if you've been working for your employer for a couple of years, you already know a lot of things. You can skip here, you can go faster. But I mean, let's start. We are new to this company, to this employer, or they are a cybersecurity consultant. You don't know much about the organization. You've been tasked to do this. You've been employed to do this. What do you need to do? First thing, you need to understand the organization chart. So you need to have more information about the company and the team. So what is who does report to, who reports to who, where do they have a CISO? Do you have a CIO? Do you have a COO? What are the roles and responsibilities of each team member? So if you have sometimes you might end up with people having multiple roles. Usually I've been working for an employer before where their senior developer was an architect, was a product architect. At some point later on, it changed, but I meant you need to understand the roles and responsibilities. So because this will help you later on when you assess your risk, and when you want to assign risks, and you want to do a lot of other things. You need to definitely learn about the company culture, customers, and about competition and challenges. So when I say about learn about the company culture, so how do they think? Customers, who are the customers, and who are your competitors, and what are the challenges in terms of technology or product that you are offering. So what are your competitors as well being challenged by? I would suggest to follow your, if you are starting new, so follow your company training program. If it exists, create your own training program according to the business jobs, the business and job needs. So as an example, learn about governance, compliance. Try to have some one-to-ones with your colleagues. Talk about work. Probably you can go, if you are doing remotely, you can do a team biscuit remotely, can have a grab a beer, and just talk to them, just generic, just start the conversation. You need to remember, always remember when you work in security, that you need to be an influencer. You can't have, I'm not saying you can't have enemies. You can't, you need to be the person who's this, who's influencing everyone, because you're gonna need them. If you are not an influencer, if you can't talk to people, if you can't communicate your ideas, it's gonna be really tough, and probably it's gonna be a failure. So how do you approach someone? How do you approach, let's say, your exec team? You're not gonna go on board them about technical details. And how do you approach a developer to tell him you can't now just go and develop like this, like the old ways. You need to follow the SDLC as an example. Yes, and then you need to start familiarizing yourself with the company technology stack. Where is it? What and why? So what are we using there? What are we using? Let's say, are we using Kubernetes, containers? Are we what programming languages do we use? Everything. So everything about the technology stack, because this is a very big part of what we're gonna do later on. So you need to know your technology, what you are using, and the technology reflect as well. It's gonna affect your security roadmap. And I insist again on the roles and the culture. So I just want to say one thing. So identify who are the people, what is their role, what are their responsibilities, what are their primary responsibilities, as I said, and what are the secondary responsibilities. Because you always have people with multiple hats, especially in smaller companies. Make sure that you understand and absorb the company culture. What are the beliefs? What are the values? What are the assumptions? What are the metrics? What are the behaviors? What are the attitude? Then your technology stack, and follow your onboarding. I know that in some large companies, like your onboarding and training program, it might take like more than a month or so. With my employer, it took me like 3 months to finish the onboarding. This is the first 30 days, so you need to listen, learn, and now let's see what we need to do in the so basically before we get into the second month, so what you need to get to a point where you have like a cybersecurity strategy, but you already started it, but that's what you need to expect. So at the end, you need to be able to put your strategy properly. From risk and compliance, you have defined your assets, you have known your risks, security architecture, you introduce, as an example, SDLC, so early engagement, defined your security services, you start you have a good interaction with the business. And at the end as well, you need to have a clear, at least plan. So on the security administration, who has access to what, and security operations, detect, response, what's coming your way. But what does it take to do this? It takes you to be proactive. You need to make sure that security is not a blocker. Remember, when you work in security and IT, sometimes you are on overhead somehow, in a way or another, especially to the sales team. Sales team are pushing. They want to sell, and you're gonna come and say, no, I cannot sign this off. You can't go with this product live. But so you need to be sensible here. In a way, you are protecting the company assets, but you're not just going you're protecting. Main thing is to protect your company assets. So um, you need to have the right coverage, make sure that your tools are efficient, your right technology controls. You know, it takes, you know, you need to get to a point where you can minimize your risk, be cost effective, understand the current threats, fix problems, deal with incidents, and document everything. So that's what it, you know, what is gonna, that's where we're gonna get to. I'm gonna re-show this slide at the end after we show, after we go through the 60 to the 90 days plan. So and after that we can highlight every single point here and say, yes, that's what we said we need to get to, and we got to it here. So in the second month, so you need to assess your security. What is the security like at your company? Do you have like your company security policies defined? You know, this is where you start from the top. So when I'm talking about data classification policies, when I'm talking about all other policies, like, you know, in terms of data classification and how do you communicate data, like data encryption and all of this. So do you have all these security policies? Do you have them in place? Have they been signed off by the top level? Because, you know, that defines somehow, it defines like what is important to the company. So let's say this is the encryption policy we follow. Then you're gonna need to choose your choose or apply a security framework. Some people like go for NIST, some people go for their own security framework. So you don't follow an exact one, but you follow all the known goods. And then you're gonna go and assess where do you sit, decide where you are. Probably you can use a scoring system. I used a scoring system before, and it was very efficient. And then you start applying your framework. This is what you need to do in the second month. We're gonna go through this point by point, and, you know, always taking in mind that, you know, the 5 pillars of information security, when you go through everything, you know, when you apply, when you assess your stuff. So in terms of availability, integrity, confidentiality, authenticity. Myself, when we get, I'm gonna go to the next slide. So to decide where we are. So you can create your own score system, or you can, or a lot of score systems that you can use online. But what do you need to, how do we decide where we are? So first at all, you ask yourself a question. Do we have a risk assessment process? Yes, no, kind of. Do we have an asset register? So do we know about our assets? You know, because that will lead you to other questions that we'll discuss later on, which are the most valuable assets to us, as an example. How are accounts created? When was the last security awareness training? We have one. We never had one. We have it every 6 months to tick the compliance box. How accessible your data? Is it like on a public repo on GitHub, or is it how do you probably using a security via obscurity? And then who approves access to the data? So if you have someone, you have a contractor joining the company, who approves this data access? So is he allowed to go there? Is he allowed to touch this? And do you have an incident response plan? So if you have an incident now, so how do you behave? You have your incident playbooks, procedures ready. Then how are accounts created? Again, so I skipped it at the top because I knew that it's going to be here. Again, I forgot to take it off. When do you look at your logs? Do you even like, you know, do you have a centralized location for your logs? Are your logs protected? Are they encrypted? What tools do you have? Like any tools, like security tools, like do you have any DAS tools, SAS tools? Do you have a SIM? So if developer A, who's very important to the company, if he leaves today, would you know? Would you recognize them? Where are they now? Probably another thing, like how many dormant accounts do we have? how many, probably when we want to talk about, separation of duties and stuff like that. Um, do we know this? But when you ask these questions, for all questions here, always ask another question with it. Is it documented? And do the right people know it exists? This is very important because, yeah, we do it this way. Where can I find that documentation? It does not exist. So it is very important to ask if it is documented or not. So in the second month, we're going to choose our security framework. So as you can see here from my slides, it's clear I've chosen the NIST one, the famous one, which I really like. I'm not going to go and explain, how, the NIST framework, but I'm just going to talk about generally how it affects um, your security roadmap. So first, we need to identify what's going on. Always take into consideration the business context. You need to identify your assets, do your governance bit. You need to detect and respond and recover. In terms of protection, you need the access control. You need to make sure that you have security awareness training. You need to make sure you are protecting your information. Then you need to be able to detect and respond. And then we are doing all of this too, so we can identify where we are sitting at the moment. So are we in the non-existence? So we only have a firewall, we only use an AV. That's the only thing we are doing. And I've seen business like that. So yeah, you are assessing their security, and it's like, what security tools do you have? Yeah, we have an AV. Is it immature? So immature security administration function, it may be happening, no real policies, probably we don't have policies, but people know what to do. Technical controls are implemented and doing some stuff. Well, are we doing our best? So probably the security administration is working. We have a policy, or we are probably developing the policies because the C-level asked us to get ISO 27001 because we need it from a sales perspective. We are currently developing some risk and compliance and security operation capabilities. Technical controls, they have basic configuration with some customization. So we have something, we are doing our best. And I think like most of the companies at the moment, like I've seen or worked for, are on that third level. So if you see here, so we started with non-existent to immature to doing our best. So then if we're gonna go to getting there on the third scale, so security administration is working, policies are defined and communicated, and processes are likewise documented and known. As SecOps are starting to work, they have some visibility on their critical assets and are expanding scope and capability. They have some ability to respond. Risk and compliance function is being performed. So basically we have a risk committee, they meet every 6 months. We have some technical controls. They provide nearly 100% coverage, and they are configured properly. So then the next scale up, which I never seen, and even if I am doing something, I can't say that I have a mature security or a very mature. I can say that, yeah, I'm always getting there, because mature is a big word. And so if you have the mature bit, risk and compliance function, they exist, security architecture and design established, security administration, they have regular reviews. So we review every couple of months. And they are able to respond to issues. Policies are all in place, reviewed all the time, or every 6 months or every year, regularly, I mean. Likewise, processes are documented, technological control are in place and always reviewed. So when you go, let's say you do a SOC 2 or ISO 27001, probably this is when you flavor your security later on, because I put it as a flavor. You need to do all the basic stuff, then add the maturity to it by doing SOC 2 or ISO 27001 and stuff like that. So basically, you're going to need to go, yeah, I'm reviewing this, I'm doing that, I'm not doing this. So if we're going to go the last bit, which is the fifth scale. So in terms of very mature, so risk and compliance that are in place and functioning, metrics are in place. We can tell when things are working properly or we have abnormalities. Security architecture and design has early engagement with the business, which is like really, really hard. You know, in most of the companies, you really fight your way into. Well, I've worked with a couple of companies, and you really you have very, very only like I can only like count a couple of examples where people started engaging in security early. So this is a big, big thing. So in terms like you have an SDLC and people are following it. So SecAdmin automation in place, SecOps, they have visibility on the environment. We have reduced time, response time to incidents, and policies are all in place. They are reviewed, updated regularly. Technical controls are in place, reviewed and automated, which is a big word in security. Advanced tools are deployed if required. So that's what we need to check. We need to check where do we sit. But how do we do this? So we need to ask ourselves a couple of questions. So we need to start applying our framework to be able to answer these questions. So you need to identify what are you protecting. That's the most important thing. What are you protecting? You know, you are protecting assets. What are you protecting them from?
You've gone all robotic, Abbas.
So that's your risk management and threat.
Your connection is bad.
Are what are the CEO concerns? What is sorry? Is it better now?
That sounds better. Yeah. Speak a couple of words.
No, we cannot.
Nope.
Would you mind trying to?
Okay, sir. Hello.
Hello, hello.
Give me 1 second. Give me 1 second, please. Hello, Chris.
Hello.
Yeah, can you hear me? Can you hear me now? Okay, sorry.
Better.
So how do I get? So basically, we I don't know where did it start to become robotic, but I mean, we were assessing. We need this is a score system that I was trying to follow myself. So where do we sit? And we asked a couple of questions and we discussed, you know, the scales. But I mean, what you need to do first here is to start applying your security framework. So you chose NIST, you got to start applying it. So how, you know, the question you need to ask, how do I get to the next page? How do we get there? And well, you need to identify your key threats. So in terms of how do I get to the next page, you need to identify what are you protecting? I'm protecting my assets. Okay, and you know, and what are you protecting the assets from? Or before I ask that question, who are like my critical assets? Which ones are my critical assets? And then what are you protecting them from? So that's your risk management and threat assessment. And what are the main concerns? What makes the CEO not sleep during the night, or even like the IT manager or security people and not sleep during the night? What would really hurt the organization most? So here, when we are doing this, it's not only you need to think about this. There are a lot of things which can hurt the organization, but here we are concentrating on the security bit. So a ransomware attack, probably if you are doing you are selling a specific technology, failure in that, in delivering like what you are selling. So your product failing, it's a big thing, right? So how do we get there? So first, what you need to do is to identify your assets. And when you identify your asset, you need to make sure to take in mind what are the business objectives, what are the critical information, what is the critical information you have, what are the systems, what are your critical system, what are your critical components. Then you're going to identify the key threats here. What happened to me what happened to the company if you have a crypto locker, as an example? What happened to those in my industry? Did they have such a thing before? What are they facing? what's going on in general in the world I am working in. So if you are, let's say, selling mailboxes as an example, so what's going on in that world? What worries you the most? Which is like, this is one of the questions I really like, and I always ask when we are doing a security assessment. So what worries you the most based on your assets? So you ask this to a product manager, you ask this to an IT manager, you ask this to a senior level. So what worries you the most when based on your assets? And then, so here we've done all of this. We asked the question, identified our assets, and then probably, you know, on your assets, you put like a value against your assets, so you can protect them, you can invest in the right place. So this is what you've done. You've done your risk assessment in the beginning. So probably in the third month, you can start, you know, based on the risk assessment, you can start adding some maturity, you can identify your resources, and you can set some achievable goals. And you can make the communication, and then you can put your roadmap. But how do we do this? Let's check it next. So you've done your risk assessment, you've went and identified your assets, and you put a value against your assets. You said, these are my most important assets, critical systems. So how do you start? So look at your higher risks, low-hanging fruits, quick wins, sort out the things that you can sort out today. Identify the treatment with the higher risks. So how do you mitigate this risk? Probably you can go and check it. Wow, this is against asset A, and asset A is not important to the business, or it's not even, we're not using it. So you can just probably avoid that, and probably you can put a cyber insurance and transfer your risk in this case. Then identify your easy wins. As I said, high cost, big impact, most difficult to achieve. So basically start with the easy wins, low hanging fruits, and probably put 3-4 high risks, like we need to sort these out yesterday, and start them. When you set your goals here, because this is what we're going to get to on the roadmap. So we assess where we are, and you know, we're going to assess where we're going to be, right? So when you assess your goals, you know, you want to talk about your goals here. You're going to need to make sure that you put achievable goals. Don't shoot yourself in the foot. Basically, be realistic. Everything takes time. So if you were, you know, yeah, we have some assets on AWS, you want to connect SAML, you want to start doing IAM, that takes time. You can't do it in one day. It's going to take you time, especially if you are a big company. So you need to take that into consideration. So as I said, start with the basic goals, start on the top level, basic goals such as policies, and not the tools. Tools can come later on. But start with the policies. Policies have the blessing of the upper level. And then what tools do you have in place? You know, do an assessment on your tools. What do we have? What would we need? So probably you can come and look, oh, we have SAST. That's good. But you know, there is one main thing we have. So if something is going on, well, we can't tell. If there is an incident occurring, we can't tell. We don't have any IPS. We don't have IDS as a minimum, but some IPS can come later on. And then, you know, when you know, achievable goals, we're talking about the achievable goals. So you need to address the high risks. So when you did the risk assessment, you have the high risk. Pick up the most important ones, like, you know, and go and sort them out. So address, you know, in the communication, you need to communicate this. So address the business angle. If you need a better remote access solution to provide like secure connection to your code, so make sure that always use that business angle here when you explain it to the higher level. Why? How does it help the business? How does it prevent blah, 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 and blah? Keep it short because I don't like you to talk much about stuff. So as an exec summary. And I will always, like when I'm approaching like senior level, I would do, you know, cost versus benefit. I would use that. And whatever you use, always link it back to a risk. So if you want to talk about, I need to get this, if we don't get it, that's what's going to happen. And then there is another like very, very good thing that you can use all the time, which is the compliance angle. which means that, as you know, salespeople come to you. Listen, we are not able to sell this in Europe because we don't have ISO 27001. We can't sell this in America because we don't have SOC 2. And probably this is something you can always use to achieve your security goals. Use the compliance angle, assuming there is a regulatory, contract, or legal requirement to maintain. So this is something you need to take into consideration when you communicate your plan. Then, after you've done all of this, you'll be able to put your roadmap. So if we just go back a little bit, so we have assessed where we were. We know what we need to do, and we know where we want to be. So in the beginning, as an example, we did not have a security framework. Yeah, so you need to use a security framework. You need to get a security framework. You need to go and document your vulnerability management and procedures. That's something you need to do. But you did not have any security framework at the beginning. You didn't have any data classification at the beginning. You're going to need to create your patch management policies. You're going to need to create your vulnerability management policies. You need to define your security. So that's all things you need to do. But where do you want to be? Where do you want to be? Probably SOC 2 or ISO 27000 compliant. We need to have definitely multi-factor authentication after a year. We need to have a SDLC after a year or 3 years, because usually put a strategy over 3 years. We need definitely to have an employee termination procedures. We need to have IDS and IPS. We need to have a SIM implemented. We need to have data audited and classified, as an example. But it's always about where we are now, what we need to do, and where do we want to be. So I'm gonna go back to the slide I told you I'm gonna show it at the end. So this is during the 90 days plan will allow you to have your cybersecurity strategy. It will be easier. So it doesn't start here. It starts there. So at the end, you're gonna have a clear view on your risk and compliance. So you're gonna have a clear view what are your assets, and then you can set achievable goals for risk and compliance and security architecture, security administration. So he needs access to what? Probably create role profiles, job descriptions. In terms of security operation, that will allow you so at the moment we are detecting, we are not responding really well. So that's how I view it. I view how to put a cybersecurity roadmap. Myself, I am, so this is my view, and any other, any views from your side are very welcome. So I would like to hear from you guys. I would like to hear your thoughts. I would like to hear, if there is something I missed on, probably we can put a more solid deck here as well and share it for other people. But that's at least the way I've done it, and I'm doing it at the moment. So this is the end from myself. Any questions? I'll check on the chat, to be honest. Yeah, sorry, I can't see any question on the chat, but do you have any questions? So this applies to any size of companies, to be honest. Okay, so I'll start answering the question one by one. So to Andreas, so what is the size of the companies? I've done a medium size and small size companies, and it worked really well. So I've done this twice. Are there any tools you can recommend to help guide us in the 90 days plan? I myself, when I did this, I developed my own tools. Basically, I used Jira. We used Jira in a very weird way before as a graphical database and for project planning. I know that some people prefer other tools. There are a lot of project management and tools like this that you can do. And to be very honest with you, and I hate to say this, there are a lot of tools that you just like couple of documentation guides that you can buy for pennies, and they can direct you into the right way. Now, question from sorry, Lewis. I hope I answered your question. Bennett saying, thank you, Bennett. Sorry, Bennett, can you elaborate on the question a little bit? Can you unmute, Bennett?
Hi, good
Hello.
afternoon. Hi.
Good afternoon, mate.
Yes, just want to confirm, yeah, of course, this is all about cybersecurity and this framework and its application in organizations, which is very, very, detailed. Of course, I've been there are new discussions about cyber resiliency instead of cybersecurity.
Yeah.
Because of course, according to what the experts say, every organization, it's not a matter of if you'll be attacked, it's a matter of when, and you have to be ready. So in the case of the cyber resilience framework, what would you do differently? What would you do to, should I say, build a framework that will help the company become a little bit more cyber resilient rather than just having a cyber security framework that will help them to fight attacks?
Okay, I would start like with, one of the things we said when we get to the high maturity level was to, I mentioned it and I laughed when I said that, like, it is about automation and being able to automate a lot of stuff, being able to that will have, being able to automate stuff, to detect stuff on the fly. So instead of being just like responsive, like just being like, what do you call it? You need to get to the point where you're detecting stuff and you are using, let's say, as an example, one of the things we used is like, tools like IPS with machine learning and AI. That's the way I see it. I mean, there are other things that you can do. I mean, these are the things I can do in terms of cyber resilience, and probably avoid like single point of failure. Yeah. So. I mean, one other thing is to like, to look at the 5 pillars of the information security as well. Like, to make sure like, your systems are available all the time, probably have, your data in multiple data centers. Well, depends on, regulatory you're following. Make sure that, so if your system goes down here, something else will pick up from another place. I mean, that's, more than a single like defense against a single threat, like probably end-to-end protection against data loss. Make sure you have like good contingency plans, tested ones. That's another thing that you can do in terms of fortifying like cybersecurity resiliency. So you just add the between the recovery and the identification phases, probably you can add something to anticipate. So that's my view. Yeah, I mean, availability is one of the main things as well, like, to make sure that you are still delivering, even if you're under attack, to ensure like continuity. The thing about cyber resiliency is I find it like it's really hard because well, to get proper cyber resiliency, it's really hard because you need to have this on the organization wide to become agile and adaptable. When you have a cyber attack, to contain an attack and carry on. Sorry, any other questions?
think James had a question about how you prioritize. A tenth of what you want to achieve in the first 90 days isn't always possible. So what do you focus on first?
Yeah, first, I mean, as I said, you start with your policies from the top, then you do your risk assessment. So basically, one of the very important things is to focus on just to have a healthy asset register, to then determine what are your most critical assets. And then you can go, do not go and start doing, like say, looking for tools. It's not that you start from doing your risk assessment, from creating your security policies, then you'll get, as an example, to the tools. I see a lot of security professionals who go, oh, I'll buy this, I'll buy that, I'll buy this. And in the end, you end up with things that you don't need. So you need to understand your business first. You need to understand what are you after? What are you protecting? And what are your products? Who are your competitors? Because, it depends on your, sometimes you might, who are your threat actors? And then you go and start going to the tools. So start with assessing your, do a risk assessment, an asset register, know your assets, know which one is most critical. And then you can identify, you can then create your risk management, and then you can create your incident management and backup plans and recovery plans and data loss prevention. But first, you need to understand what do you have, where you are. So these 3 questions, always ask the 3 questions. I put on the roadmap, which are, where are we, where are you now? What do you need to do, and where do you want to get to? That's what I would follow, and that's how I would prioritize my my stuff. Okay, so Lewis, what's a good strategy for doing a risk assessment? So when you do your risk assessment, make sure at first you need to definitely know your assets. What are your most critical ones? Just start with the most critical assets. Start from there. And to answer the question, I know that what my assets are, but I don't necessarily know what all the potential threats to those assets. We can't, you always have, as an example, we don't always know what are all the threats. But one of the things, if you want to know what can be a potential threat, is to do like, probably start on your products, start doing a threat model and stuff like that. So then on your systems, then do it on the systems component. But you can't get all the potential threats, as you know, so it's really hard to know, but you can expect. So if you do a threat model for a system, you can tell, these are my attacking vectors, my attacking surface, these are my threat actors, these are potential threats which might affect my business or my assets. You're welcome. Any more questions? Okay. All right. Thank you, everyone. Thanks for attending. And I just want to say to what Chris CIS benchmark is it's a great framework to use. I like it. When you use a framework, benchmarking stuff, just remember, to look at the context. What is it affecting? This is again about your what is your most critical asset, and if it is, let's say, if it is an air gap network and you have a CIS benchmark of 10, it does not matter, right? Because it is in an air gap network.
Yeah, I think it's more literally a high level, right, to say these are the areas you should be sort of focusing on.
Yeah.
As opposed to this is what you should be doing. It's more, this is what we recommend. Yeah. How do you fit in between those lines?
And this definitely will, answering Lewis as well. One of Lewis' questions. It will make your job easier. when you are, you have a critical asset, you have your CIS benchmark, a framework, and then it can tell you like, you have a score of whatever, 10, that means, the critical assets, and that will tell you like, you need to sort this out yesterday.
Awesome. Nice one, Abbas.
Cool. Thank you very much, guys. Thank you, everyone. And we will talk in the future. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Everyone
Cheers.
for joining the session.
Cheers.